welcome to Digital Shift, also known as Corporate Evolution Tales. Join us as we dive into the dynamic world of digital transformation. From illuminating case studies to captivating narratives, we uncover the stories behind companies' journeys toward digital excellence. Whether you are a seasoned corporate leader or an aspiring innovator, our podcast explores the shifts, challenges of modern business evolution. Hello everyone, this is another episode of Digital Shifts aka Corporate Evolution Tales, and today with us is Dan. Hello Dan, thank you so much for accepting the invitation, and would you like to present who you are, what kind of experience you have?
Sure, yeah. I'm Dan Melnick. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Zing, and I live in Austin, Texas. I've been in the entrepreneurship space for since 2011. I've been doing it for a long time. This is my third company, so yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, the logical question that I'm usually starting with is what do you think about digital transformation? So, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. I think more and more people are going to that kind of sphere, and I see many companies today even using pen and paper, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
more and more technology is important, and even obviously AI, is super critical in 2024. Like I always tell people, if they're not using it, they're actually quite behind. So it's important to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you're keeping up with the trends to make your services and products as high level and modern as possible.
Yes, agree. Well, you mentioned about AI, and I think that's the topic that everyone is interested in. So, and I'm usually connecting with digital transformation. So, do you think that they are going hand in hand? Like, is there any relation that there can be, or like support from AI side when speaking about digital transformation?
100%. I mean, AI today is pretty much has hands in everything in business, and yeah, especially for digital transformation. I mean, AI is obviously there, right? I mean, if you're, you know, doing things on the software side or marketing
Mm-hmm.
side, I mean, you have to use AI tool. Otherwise, you're just not productive. And you're also a step behind your competition. So it's important to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that whatever you have available to you and just to maximize efficiency, I mean, those tools are super, super helpful.
Agree. Well, there are a lot of tools, but generally, when we are speaking about a digital transformation, so are there any challenges that are coming to your mind when speaking about it, like for for big and small companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI, so you're saying about AI and digital transformation. I mean, I think AI for sure can be a challenge because the biggest thing, if you're a large organization, even if you're small, if you're
Mm-hmm.
building something or working on something proprietary, you don't want to be using ChatGPT because, well,
Right.
ChatGPT is open source, right? So people have the ability, they have the access to what you're
Mm-hmm.
building, to the code, to other ideas, right? So that's one thing. I mean, I think in terms of other organizations, I think just a lack of personalization sometimes, and then like the lack of correctness. So
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT, I mean, if you're writing code, for example, it's not going to be always correct. There's going to be challenges. It can help you out, but it
Right.
might, kind of guide you like in the wrong direction. So really,
Mm-hmm.
it's important to make sure that whatever you're doing, that is, working for you like at a high
Mm-hmm.
level.
Mm-hmm. Agree. Well, there are really a lot of challenges, and as you mentioned, it's about the correct data, if we can say so, or like appropriately using the data. Because usually people, what they are saying is like AI is making everything easier, but it's still, in my opinion, it's still about being careful with the data that we are getting from the same ChatGPT and generally like from these kind of tools, because it's still like we need to be careful with the data when using it. So what do you think generally should people be afraid of digital transformation? Because usually when in big companies, even on small ones, when we are speaking about digital transformation, people are thinking, okay, it's same with AI that like we will be replaced, because of obviously like with digital transformation it's all about automating processes, which is basically going to be kind of affected for people that are working on those parts. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely shouldn't be afraid. I mean, it's like, obviously there's always going to be challenges and fear. I mean, especially if you're changing out a software, improving your software, there's many legacy softwares that people are using for decades, and it's very difficult to go back and tell somebody, hey, now we're going to use something else. Which
Yes.
obviously, the reason why you're switching is because what you're using before is not that good, and because you have better options, you can maximize efficiency. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's a lot of pushback. I mean, I did some consulting before when it came to ERP implementations and things. It was
Mm-hmm.
very hard, right, to convince people that hey, this is what they have to do. You've been using this program for 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great, but like 20 years in technology is like 100 years. So
Yes.
it's like, yeah, I mean, the time has passed you by, and it's important to make sure that you're up to date with the newest technology and just improving things as much as possible, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think you're right there. And generally, about technologies, are there any kind of suggestions or like habits that you have that are keeping you up to date with the tools? As you mentioned, like even 10 years in our usual life is like 100 years in the technology, right? So, what are your thoughts there, or like the suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT, I use it every day. I think when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to ideas, I still don't think, just sort of what I mentioned, it's still not as high level as I would like it to be. So I don't have it write the content for me, but it gives me ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. I think just even for me going back, grammar, spelling checks, things like that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's always important to use it as a resource, but I don't lean on it to like do all the work for me. But yeah, I mean, it is very helpful, and I
Mm-hmm.
think there's so many other AI tools that I've looked at.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's just
Right.
more about maximizing efficiency, and especially since we do have a global team, we have
Mm-hmm.
people in the Philippines and Pakistan where English is not their first language.
Mm-hmm.
So leveraging ChatGPT for them is extremely beneficial because it can help them improve
Yeah.
their English, improve like how to say things, and using
Mm-hmm.
proper grammar.
Agree. So you mentioned basically like I think that's important topic generally when we are saying that we have people also outside like from different cultures and different countries, etc. So I think that's the one thing that we usually need to take into account when speaking about digital transformation. So what are your thoughts there? Is it like easier to have everyone in house in same place when doing digital transformation, or it's fine to have like people that are working remotely and still being able to have successful digital transformation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it can be done. I mean, so we have like an office in Pakistan of 40 people,
Mm-hmm.
give or take. So they're all in the office. They're not
Mm-hmm.
remote. For me, it's remote because I'm in Austin, Texas. But yeah, I mean, it's I think it helps to be in the office, but I think I've
Mm-hmm.
seen many, you know, dev teams and marketing teams, and
Mm-hmm.
like in the Philippines, like our team is all work from home. We don't have an office
Yes.
there, so from that
Mm-hmm.
standpoint, like it does work. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's just a matter of making sure that the people that are working are motivated and are able to get their tasks done. I mean, listen, it doesn't matter where you work from. If you can
Yeah.
get the work done, if you can stay on top of it, then it works. But
Mm-hmm.
I've seen obviously people that work from home and take a nap in the middle of the day for several hours, and you don't hear from them, and the work's not getting done, and you're just like, what's going on? So I think, yeah, it just
Mm-hmm.
depends. But to me, it's all about productivity. So yeah, if you can get your
Yeah.
work done in 3 hours, great. If not, well, you should be
Mm-hmm.
online and getting it done and be responsive for sure.
Right. Right. Well, you spoke about motivation. I think that we can also connect that to digital transformation and generally like though at the beginning of the process, but it's still about like creating that atmosphere of being motivated or like the positive thing about digital transformation. Do you think that there are any suggestions there, like what people like our audience should take into account related to keeping people motivated when starting this process of automating stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think staying motivated for sure is important. I think it's important to make sure that you have certain metrics in place, deadlines, timelines, and
Mm-hmm.
expectations. And if people are not meeting them, understanding why they're not meeting them and holding them accountable. I mean, I think that can be a challenge sometimes with global
Mm-hmm.
teams because in America we're very adamant about deadlines, and overseas it sometimes can be a bit more lax. So understanding, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
we have this deadline, it needs to be done. There's no exceptions. So
Right.
yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing is really pushing hard on those expectations and making sure that we're 100% aligned.
So, are we coming to the point that also communication is something really important for digital transformation? Will you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we use Slack, we use Microsoft Teams,
Mm-hmm.
we use WhatsApp even sometimes. It's not ideal, but we do. For us, it's like yeah, even all the different communication channels, and we have calls several times a day. Even though our team is global, we do all
Yeah.
work, and for the most part, in Central Time hours. So for us, like it's very
Mm-hmm.
easy for us to communicate and sync, but it's just a matter of expectations, because sometimes you might
Mm-hmm.
call somebody and they're on like a different call. So, but yeah, I mean, we're very much in communication throughout the day.
Awesome. Well, the other question that I have will be about you have pretty good experience generally, and I think you have also a lot of lessons learned already in your pocket. So, is there any lessons or like any lesson actually that you would like to share with the audience that is like that will help them to prevent some problems?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think if you're a startup, understanding the problem that you're solving and cash flow is king. I think it's like many people are in this position trying to solve a problem and that doesn't exist, or
Mm-hmm.
they have these commitments or hypothetical commitments. So making sure that hey, like you have this agreement, okay, we're going to build this out, but pay us this amount because listen, the business needs cash flow to survive and to grow. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a mistake that early on that we made, and I think understanding kind of like if we're building a product, like you know, what is the use case? Will people actually
Mm-hmm.
use the product? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a lot that goes into it, but I think it's really just making sure that whatever you're building is
Mm-hmm.
going to give value and that you're collecting cash up front
Mm-hmm.
to grow your business.
Okay, I see. And how about the plan, like having anything planned? Is it appropriate during digital transformation to have a plan on the hand, or it is more like go with the flow and understand what can be done?
No, I think for sure having plans are super important. I mean, if you go with the flow, nothing's going to get done. I think it's making sure that you're aligned on milestones, timelines, expectations. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, sometimes you might have certain things that might kind of come up along the way, but sometimes you're building something and the requirements change,
Mm-hmm.
or you want to go and change the tech stack, fine, but you really should have a plan. Try and stick to it as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, there is another thing that I'm usually asking. It's about the team. And you mentioned that you have basically people working remotely. And do you think that it is important to have experienced people in the team when starting digital transformation or any automation on the process, or it's all about like having amount of people, more people, better, or it's the experience that you should have?
Experience, quality are super important. I mean, I think, listen, if you're going to have junior people, for sure, it's fine. I mean, somebody has to start somewhere, has to learn, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to have senior people that have been there and done that can help guide
Mm-hmm.
them. But yeah, if you're going to have people on your team that are also not experienced, they need to have the right attitude, the right,
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned earlier, motivation. Because if not, it's not going to be a good situation.
Yes, yes, agree. Awesome. Well, I think there is one last question that I would like to ask you. It's about the advice that you would offer to our audience or like the companies that would like to do the digital transformation. So, what will be your advice to these people?
Yeah, for sure. Do your research. Make sure that you have the right team in place. And to your point,
Mm-hmm.
teams that are experienced and have been there and done that. I think that's important. I mean, obviously, in 2024, you have lots of options, but looking at experience, cost, what's possible. I mean, I think it's many people make lots of promises, but they don't deliver. So I think it's really, really important to make sure that you're
Mm-hmm.
aligned on the expectations, the cost, and the
Well, I said it's the last question, but your answer actually intrigued me. But
sure.
so this will be the last question. You mentioned about the promises. So as basically my company, as I mentioned before this episode started, is working with companies and helping them. I know pretty well how to estimate, but what do you think about those promises? Like how companies that want to do digital transformation, how they can make sure that the people that are going to work on that path are giving true promises or like real estimations.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you can't 100% predict every single detail, but I think
Hmm.
as long as you're aligned on those expectations, and I think yeah, there's nothing people hate more than hidden fees. So if you're aligned on the
Hmm.
cost, the scope, like, yeah, sure, it might take longer, but if it's going to cost more, here's why, here is the scope, right? So I think transparency is key, right? If you're transparent, if you're
Hmm.
aligned, because I think it's an education piece. I mean, you have people and clients that you might work with who might not understand technology or understand how the
Yeah.
process works. So it's like, okay, here's a process. Here's why it might, get delayed. Here's the why it's an
Hmm.
estimate, but you know, just making sure that like you're on the same page. Because yeah, like that's the biggest thing is education piece. Because
Right.
when you're in the space, you might make assumptions of
Hmm.
your clients or potential clients knowledge, right? So understanding like, what do they actually know? What is the expectation? What is aligned? And can this be a successful endeavor for everybody?
Agree. I think so far every guest of this podcast actually mentioned the transparency, which is quite interesting because me myself, I also believe that transparency is one of the values that there should be generally in the customer and service provider relationship because that's actually what is setting the expectations correctly and there is no misunderstanding and all those issues that can come with that. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. Are there any last words that you would like to mention then?
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You can find me. I'm on LinkedIn, Dan Melnick. Instagram. Our website is myzing.io, so you can reach out there as well. But Miriam, I really appreciate your time today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being the guest and accepting the invitation. Yeah, have a great day.
Thanks, you too.